Okay, for this video right here, it's going to be a little bit something different. This is going to be my top 10 books in WWE history or pro wrestling history. And, there really isn't a lot of, there really isn't any lists on YouTube. I wanted to check YouTube, see if there was any, recommended list of pro wrestling books. But, you saw a lot of WWE book collections, things like that. But yeah, man, I have to say these are the top 10 books that really came to mind. I've always enjoyed reading a lot of these, WWE superstar books. They really give you a behind the scenes, exclusive look about what the thought process was behind, backstage. And, I definitely have to say, like, when I look back at a lot of the older videos, especially some of the pay-per-view rewinds, reading a lot of these books has definitely helped, understand things, or maybe you understand the thought process of what happened here, what happened there, or, why did this happen? And, a lot of times the books really go into great detail about, what, exactly what happened. So yeah, man. So this is, so let's get right down to the list. At number 10, I'm going to go with Eric Bischoff, Controversy Creates Cash. This came out around the time Bischoff was, I think he had already left WWE, but, the book was going to do better in terms of WWE distributing it, promoting it. So this is kind of like the last thing Bischoff did with the WWE before his contract expired. But yeah, man, when you think of the title, though, Controversy Creates Cash, I wouldn't say Bischoff was the type of guy that was controversial in terms of exploiting women or, sexuality and some of the things that happened in the Attitude Era. He was more controversy in terms of, shock value, in terms of really, surprising you with WWE talent. Like the Lex Luger thing comes to mind, throwing the championship belt in the trash, things like that come to mind. But really, what I really remember about the book is just Bischoff's, business sense. He was like, when he talked about growing up, always went into depth about, just doing different things with business, always finding different jobs with friends, when something else failed, it's like, all right, let's start another business. So it gets you inside his mind about how obsessed he was with, making money and just generating revenue. And, when one of the reasons he got into wrestling was he always felt like, pro wrestling as a whole is he was quoted as saying it's the purest form of entertainment. And, that's the main reason why he got into it. I think Bischoff is a really cool guy. Like, I kind of feel the same way Jericho does about him. Like Jericho said, like he was a prick, to work for, but when he was just like an employee at WWE, it was like he was a pretty cool guy to get to know. He really does seem like a cool guy. I really I think he's an intelligent guy. I wouldn't mind having a conversation with him, but I would agree though. Like he seems like he could get a little bit overwhelmed, like if he's running the show. So yeah, that's Eric Bischoff, Controversy Creates Cash at number 10. At number 9, I'm going to have to go with Edge. You Think You Know Me, Adam Copeland on Edge. I think that's the name of the book. But yeah, this actually came out when Edge, after his neck surgery, he was going to stay home a whole year. So they actually asked him to write a book. So the book was actually written before Edge ever even won a WWE championship. But yeah, you know what? This is just a type of book you just have to have fun with. Edge is very funny. He's not afraid to admit, like, some of the times he came off like a dumbass. He's willingly and openly admit to, biting a lot of his promos from movies like Wayne's World. You got to see a lot of the, the awesome stories he told, about, when he first started out training in Canada. You remember that whole story about him, Edge, Christian, and Rhino had to, try to drive across a frozen lake just to try to get to wrestling school, stories like that. You got a whole behind the scenes scenes look at the SmackDown Super Six. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those books that, I don't think you could take it too seriously. I think Edge even clowned about how, it sucks that he has to write a book before he even won the WWE Championship. But it's kind of crazy. Like, the book came out and he won the WWE title like, what, 11 or 12 times since the book came out. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of the most entertaining books. It's not like as serious, and it's not as, it doesn't document the whole lifespan of a wrestler like a Ric Flair book would do, but it's a very entertaining read. Adam Copeland on Edge, released in I believe it came out like around, I think it came out like in 2004 maybe. All right, so at number 8, I'm going to go with Eddie Guerrero, Cheating Death, Stealing Life, the Eddie Guerrero story. I believe this actually came out right before Eddie had passed away. But, like I said, man, a lot of these books, it's been such a long time since I've read all of them. I wasn't going to go back and read all of them just for this video, but yeah, I mean, I do remember this came out. It was my first year of college. I think I remember reading this book on top of a bunk bed that first semester. And, I really remember like a lot of he went in depth about, just trying to get back to the WWE, like all the hardships about, getting back, going through the indies. And, I remember him talking about the phone call where I can't remember exactly who it was. Maybe Jim Ross or John Laurinaitis asked him. He said, "Eddie, we're thinking about bringing you back." See, I really think they brought Eddie back because I think they noticed how good he was, how good he looked. He just got himself into incredible shape. Once he started competing in Ring of Honor, and then the brand extension too. The brand extension really kind of opened the door up for him to come back, and obviously the success of Rob Van Dam and the Frog Splash, made it a natural fit. So I do remember, just the story of Eddie coming back was just phenomenal. I remember him talking about Brock and how he was, he thought Brock was his success was kind of forced at first, but by the time he beat Brock for the title, he felt like Brock was, the man, like he was carrying himself like a legit champion. So yeah, I just remember Eddie's book was fascinating, especially a lot of, him growing up in the wrestling ring. And, I don't think anyone's ever, felt more at home in a wrestling ring than Eddie Guerrero. So yeah, the Eddie, I wish I still had the Eddie book. It's definitely a book I love to read again, but obviously you guys know the Eddie Guerrero story is incredible. So I got that at number 8. Okay, at number 7, I got Ric Flair, To Be the Man. This came out in the summer of 2004, and I definitely thought this was a great story. I mean, it covered so much. I mean, from the Four Horsemen to the Steamboat Trilogy to the Terry Funk stuff to going to the WWE, winning the Royal Rumble and everything. I mean, there's just so much. It just covers so much ground. That's part of what makes it a great story. But Flair is very honest as well. There's a lot of ups and downs here, but what you really remember the book about is how much controversy it caused. I mean, he was taking shots at a lot of different people. Taking shots at Foley. There was even some comments about how Randy Savage. Didn't like the way he worked, about how Savage liked to plan everything out. It kind of caused a divide between wrestlers that like to call things in the ring and other wrestlers that like to map stuff out. But most of all, it sparked a real life feud between Flair and Bret. After Flair took shots at Bret for not being a draw, for using Owen to gain sympathy, that really pissed Bret Hart off. And then Bret Hart went on a tirade about how he really felt about Flair and all the things that Stu used to call Flair a routine guy, and then Flair would go off about Bret about how he was a routine guy. So you had all this. You basically. I just remember the book really started a war of words between Flair and Bret, and honestly, man, Chris Benoit ended up being the voice of reason. He actually came on Bite This, and he just came out and said, look, it'd be boring if everyone wrestled like Ric Flair. It'd be boring if everyone wrestled like Bret Hart. that's what makes pro wrestling great, the different styles, the different approaches to, how to work a match. So, I mean, yeah, obviously it was definitely an incredible book. I was actually, skimming through it again before this video because it's been such a long time since I read it, but I think Meltzer actually was quoted as saying it was, the best book best written book in pro wrestling history. I don't know if it was that good, but the reissue of it, you had Jim Cornette and Jim Ross, and just a lot of input from a lot of the guys that really were a big part of Flair's life. So yeah, man, definitely something that's got to be required reading for anyone that wants to get into professional wrestling. Okay, at number 6, I'm going to go with Chris Jericho's second book. This is called Undisputed. I believe this came out in the beginning of 2011. And yeah, man, I mean, this was definitely a great book. The first book pretty much ends when his WWE career gets underway. So this is pretty much all about the WWE career until the summer of 2005. Also a lot of, behind the scenes stuff with Fozzy. What you learn about this in this book, you learn about how difficult it was to adapt to the WWE style. I don't know if anyone's ever expressed this amount of frustration with trying to adapt to the WWE style, as Jericho talked about in the in late 1999, and also talked about how he felt like he was at a war with Triple H and Vince McMahon in China at the time, and eventually things worked out for him once you get into the year 2000, and you really kind of learn things really kind of opened up for him after the Triple H injury. Like he eventually he won Vince over, and it got to the point where Vince thought, Jericho can make anything work. And then slowly you just learn when Triple H comes back from the injury, the tide kind of turned against him. Once he won the Undisputed Championship, when he became Undisputed Champion, he felt like he was under even more of a microscope than when he came in at the first time. So, yeah, you just learn a lot about the ups and downs that come with, being a WWF superstar, being the WWE Undisputed Champion. Obviously, this is where you learn about the WrestleMania bonus situation, which it just comes off as very toxic to me, about how there's no really set structure. We just give the especially when you get to like WrestleMania 18, WrestleMania 19, when you have stars sprinkled out throughout the card. I mean, it's great to have that much star power at a WrestleMania, but the side effect of it is like how do you spread it out fairly? And you have Jericho as the first ever Undisputed Champion main eventing WrestleMania, and then he makes a WrestleMania bonus similar to what a mid-carder would make. So you just learn about how political, how backstabbing, how ruthless the business can be while being a top star. But yeah, man, the Undisputed book, it was definitely, you just definitely learn about a lot of the ups and downs that Jericho had, during his first run in the WWE. All right, at number 5, I have Shawn Michaels' book. It's called Heartbreak and Triumph. This came out around Christmas time, 2005. And what I loved about what I love about Shawn Michaels in general, not just in the book, but also in interviews and documentaries, he doesn't mind admitting that he was wrong in the past. He takes blame for all of his mistakes, and I really feel like, and some people would disagree with me, but I do feel like Shawn really became a good person over the years, even though most people that worked with Shawn back in the mid 90s, like a Jim Cornette or even like a Bret Hart, they're quick to label Shawn Michaels as an arrogant prick, asshole, whatever you want to label him, but. I mean, just a lot of great stories, when Shawn was, during his younger days, a lot of the, really came clean about a lot of the, situations he went through. There was one story really stands out. I can't remember the exact story. It's been a while since I read the book, but, I think there was this one woman or one person that said, your son is white trash. Basically someone in the neighborhood labeled Shawn as white trash, and you learn about how much you just gained a lot of respect for Shawn's father. I think Shawn's father actually said, you can't call my son white trash. for no reason at all. So you learned about how much his dad, really stood up for Shawn back in the day. I remember that story. Just the whole scene with him actually. I think he actually went to Louisiana to learn how to wrestle. So you had an inside look at the drive from Texas to Louisiana, how nervous Shawn was, first starting out. I remember all of that stuff. Plus, you hear his side of the story with the feud with Bret. Basically, he took a lot of shots at Bret here. I think he said that he didn't think he was a great wrestler because he didn't switch things up enough. He wasn't exciting enough in the ring. And then you learn a lot about money. You learn a lot of the animosity and a lot of the beef with Bret was definitely over money. When Bret signed that contract, obviously that caused even more friction. I mean, a lot of people were quick to maybe it was over a woman or maybe it was over the championship belt. But the bottom line is when you look at what was the biggest factor in the real life feud between Shawn and Bret, in like most cases, it was probably over money. I think Shawn was making like $700,000 when he was WWF champion, and then Bret takes a whole year off, and then he comes back and he's making $20 million. He basically got the Magic Johnson deal. 16 years later, it was 20 years, $20 million, but basically that's you learn a lot about the animosity between him and Bret, and the book pretty much ends with Shawn doing a complete switching of mentalities about how we refused to do jobs back in the day, but when you get to the Kurt Angle match, Shawn was smart enough to realize I get over by my performance, not by winning and losing matches. So he was more than happy to put Kurt Angle over, since Angle was a heel and you had two baby faces as champions. It was the logical thing to do. And the book basically ends with him telling his wife, after the match with Kurt, I have the greatest job in the world. And yeah, so I thought that was definitely a great book. I thought it was honest. Shawn Michaels, say what you want about him, but I feel like he's definitely an honest guy. So I got that at number 5. Okay, number 4, I got Kurt Angle with It's True, It's True. The book actually came out, I believe the book actually came out on September 11th, a couple weeks before Kurt won his second WWF championship. So it came out pretty early in Angle's career. So it was pretty much released at a time when Angle was still kind of green in terms of, being a professional wrestler. So it's not as decorated as like a Ric Flair book. But yeah, man, I mean, really, the great part about the book is you really got a lot of the, ins and outs about what Angle did to train for the Olympics, a lot of his training techniques. I remember one of the quotes from the book that really stuck with me. And he said that, he really found out that the human body is a lot more capable than people think. It's one of the things he learned. It's having that mentality was one of the reasons why he was able to train as hard as he did, and obviously moved on to the Olympics. And you learn about how intimidated he was to go up against bigger Russians in the Olympics. You learn about how Rocky IV was one of the most inspirational movies in Angle's career. Also, you learn a lot about his dad. I believe his dad was actually a crane worker in Pittsburgh, and his dad actually fell off a building when he was actually 16 years old. And, he credits that as, one of the things that really motivated him, because he would always say to himself, like, if I wasn't training, if I wasn't working as hard as I could have, what would my father, think? So I definitely remember that. Also, obviously he touched on a lot of his WWE career. I'm trying to think of something interesting that I remember about the book. I do remember, when they took the title off of him before WrestleMania 17. He was actually okay with it. He was willing to be a team player, and he was able to accept that maybe his time just isn't quite now. He even admitted, I think I need another year to main event WrestleMania. It ended up being 2 years. You learn about the mutual agreement that him and Chris Benoit had before their matches. So yeah, I mean, the Angle book was You know, I just thought you had a lot of good stuff in there. It was in that book where you learned about how much respect he had for Triple H at that time. At that time, he was actually calling Triple H the best in the business. Obviously that changed, after the Triple H injury. But yeah, man, the Angle book. Yeah, I mean, if you used to be involved in athletics and you're really into training and sacrifice and really the competitive side of pro wrestling, I still think the Angle book really holds up quite well. And then number 3, we're going to go with Mick Foley. Have a Nice Day. Obviously, this is the this is probably the crowning achievement of all wrestling books. I know people that knew nothing about Mick Foley, knew nothing about the WWE, that absolutely loved this book. So obviously it was very well written. Give Foley credit. He's a smart guy, especially before all the head injuries. I mean, this. He's a great writer. He was able to write the book by himself. That's one of the, when he had his feud with Flair, that's one of the things I think he criticized Flair for not writing the book by himself. So, but obviously it was just a great, it was almost like a Rocky like wrestling story to a degree. There's tales in this. It's been such a long time since I've read the book. I mean, we're going back. I think I read the book in 2002, so it's been a while, but. I do remember one of the stories that really captivated people was when he was in college on the weekends, he used to, take a long ass car ride to Pittsburgh to go train with, what was his name? Dominic DeLucci. And, you just learn stories about how he used to, sleep in the car and, he basically used to live on like popcorn just to, all the sacrifices he made to go and train. Obviously, wrestling overseas, him losing the ear, these are stories that, anybody could appreciate, not just wrestling fans. So you learn about how, how grueling of a life, Foley had as a wrestler, all the injuries and all that stuff. And you also, I do remember him writing about the Hell in a Cell match. I do remember him talking about how, one of the biggest reasons why he took the bump was because of fear. It was based out of fear. I think the Undertaker had a broken foot and he just went up to Undertaker and said, "Hey, listen, I'm afraid this match is going to suck. How do you feel about doing this, this, and this?" And, the rest is history. So I do remember that. But, yeah, man, Foley, I have a hell of a lot of respect for Foley. Obviously he's doing a lot better than Chris Benoit because Chris Benoit is dead right now. But the one, my biggest gripe with Foley is, a lot of people are under this false narrative that Foley is like professional wrestling's biggest fan. I don't really agree with that. And, my brother agrees with me too. Like Foley could be a little bit self-deprecating. Maybe it has a lot to do with his comedic background. I know he's done some stand-up comedy in the past, but I just don't like, I think there's a reason why Foley wasn't able to transition to being a color commentator. I don't know. I just think a lot of his love for the business is a little bit forced to a degree. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way too. Like if you ever watch like the Mick Foley compilation, I think it's called Hard Knocks or Greatest. Actually, you know what? My mistake. It's called Greatest Hits and Misses. He actually does the introduction and he actually hosts the DVD. And one of the things he says is, if you bought this, DVD, obviously you're not dating right now or something like that. So basically he's like burying his fan base by doing that. So I don't know. I just didn't like that about, the way I don't know. It seems like he's done that over and over again where like if you're a wrestling fan, you can't have or if you're a fan of my work, you can't have much of a life. I know he's actually said that to people that, came up to him and were, proud of the Hell in a Cell match with the Undertaker. So I don't know, that's what I just find a little bit weird about Foley, how he could be a little bit self-deprecating, as my brother had termed it. But yeah, man. But Foley's book obviously was number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It really kind of opened the door up for, when Foley's book came out, everybody wanted to write a book. I think even The Rock wrote a book, which was pretty much in character. wasn't as personal as the Foley book, but yeah, man, the Foley book. If you thought this was like the standard for all the pro wrestling books, I'm not going to disagree with you. But yeah, that's Mick Foley. Have a nice day. All right, so at number 2, I got Chris Jericho's first book, A Lion's Tale, Wrestling Around the World in Spandex. I believe that was the name of the book. But yeah, Jericho's very first book, it was an awesome book. I mean, it really details Jericho's life right before he got to the WWE. I think the book ends like right before he makes his debut in 1999. But I mean, yeah, it's just a roller coaster ride of a book. I mean, it details, Jericho training with Lance Storm in Canada with the, what was supposed to be the Hart Wrestling School, to Mexico, to Germany, to, the matches in Japan, meeting Benoit for the first time, they're covering Owen Hart's funeral. From a non-wrestling standpoint, I'm trying to remember something interesting about the book. What really stands out is his mother's accident. I believe the mother actually ended up being paralyzed. And, while he was promoting the book, like someone was actually making fun of Christopher Reeve. And I remember Jericho was like, "That's not cool, man." And there was like this really, it wasn't a fight, but there was just a lot of tension. And this one radio spot that Jericho did, and one guy's like, "Yeah, man, I forgot to tell you, his mom actually had an accident and she got paralyzed." And I believe it might have had something to do with, Jericho. One of her boyfriends was the reason why the accident happened, and Jericho was so angry that he wanted to do something violent, and then someone said, "Listen, man, it's just not worth it, just not worth it." So from a non-wrestling standpoint, I do remember that about the book. I remember Jericho actually talked about how this one hot Mexican girl came on to him while he was in Mexico, and he couldn't control himself, and that's when he finally lost his virginity. So you have that story to talk about. There's a whole bunch of like crazy stories in Germany. Just a lot of like non-wrestling stories that were just really fascinating here. And then, you just learn the really details about how all the different styles of wrestling that Jericho learned. Really, he's just had a great career. I mean, I would definitely say that Jericho has definitely had like the ideal career. Like when we're talking about the total package of a professional wrestler, I think, it's very valuable that he was able to go to different countries, learn different styles. And yeah, man, it's just it was just a hell of a book. This is the one book I wish I could actually read again if I still had it, is Chris Jericho's first book. All right, so let me just jump right into number 1. And number 1, I have Bret Hart. Bret Hart's book, The Hitman. Oh, man, this was, this was a fascinating book. I actually read it twice. That's how much I, really enjoyed the book. And the funny thing is, like, if I hadn't read this the second time, I wouldn't have been able to really go in depth with the 1997 pay-per-view rewind. I mean, reading this book a second time really kind of opened me up to, exactly what went on with the screw job, and, just Bret's point of view, even, some of the quotes that he put in here from Meltzer. It really, if you watch the 1997 pay-per-view rewind, that's probably the most, reading a book ever really helped me out with, making a video on YouTube. And, a funny story is like when I got the Bret Hart book for a second time, I remember the first time I sold it, I just wanted to make room and get rid of all my wrestling books. But I tried to buy the Wrestling with Shadows DVD from High Spots, and when High Spots sent me the package, it was actually the Bret Hart book, not the Wrestling with Shadows DVD. So I called them up. I said, "Hey, listen, man, you guys gave me the wrong order. I was the Wrestling with Shadows DVD is not here." So I was hoping they would just send me the DVD, and they were like, "Didn't I just send you like a Bret Hart book?" I said, "Yeah, but I didn't order the book." And he said, "Well, I'll give you the DVD if you mail the book back." And I was just like, you know what? I'll just keep the book. Fuck it. And I'm glad I did. I read it that whole year, and reading the book a second time, it really stuck with me, and it really, really hit me. But the bottom line is, man, Bret has had just such a great career. In my opinion, I just think he's the greatest professional wrestling of all time. I do think he's the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. And when he wrote this book, throughout his whole career, he actually used to tape a recap of some of his days in the WWF or some of his matches. He actually used to, use a tape recorder and just kind of, recap about exactly what was said and what happened. And it definitely helped with this book, without a doubt. But yeah, man, as always, the book was very, not controversial. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it really kind of detailed the real life feuds with, Flair. Some of the stuff about Hogan was fully explained here. Obviously, the stuff with Shawn really went into depth about, exactly what problems he had with Shawn leading up to the screw job. I mean, it's just one of those books you could go on and on about, but I felt it was honest. I felt it was real. It was just an incredible book. It's the one book in this whole set of WWE books that I feel it's not even actually it wasn't even distributed by the WWE, believe it or not. But yeah, man, the Bret Hart book. I still feel like from top to bottom that is without a doubt the best book that's ever been written out of all these pro wrestling autobiographies. So that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, I could go and I feel like I have to go more in depth about the book, but it's just like there's just so much to talk about. But I mean, it really made you open an eye up into the Montreal screw job. If you were ever critical, it's true. I mean, that's one of the great things about Bret in the book is that he takes his legacy, takes his career seriously, which is what I love about it. But at the same time, like when he details the facts about what happened to Montreal, like he's able to back up every single little fact and tell his side of the story. And it kind of makes you sympathize with him even more about what actually happened. So so if you haven't read the Bret Hart book yet, and if you're one of these guys that's kind of anti Bret Hart, and you side with Vince or you side with Shawn over him, it definitely lets you see his side of the story in a very positive light. So I'll definitely say that. But yeah, so that's at number one. Bret Hart's the Hitman book. Trying to think when this came out. I want to say it came out around 2008, 2009. I remember I read it in 2009, and then I finally read it again in late 2015, going into 2016. And like I said, the second time reading it, it really helped me for that 1997 pay-per-view rewind. I mean, the book was so good. I actually used quotes of the book just to kind of, make certain points about, internally what was happening within the screw job. So, that's pretty much it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Top 10 books in WWE history, pro wrestling history. If I'm leaving anything out, then let me know. I mean, I'm leaving out the Daniel Bryan book, leaving out the Stone Cold book, but these are just the books that initially just came to mind as I was making this list. So that's pretty much it. And all right.